Hello and welcome once again to an episode of the Get Real Podcast. Non-Pastor Dan and you're...
Depasteurized.
Depasteurized. I thought you were unpasteurized. I can't ever get it straight.
Unpasteurized.
Okay.
Isn't that like milk or something like that? Unpasteurized. And I think people really are kind of curious how we become unpastor and depastor. No, we did not get excommunicated from the church.
Yeah, that would probably be an entire show. I think it really would. But we don't have anything against pastors.
No, we don't.
Some of them I might, but I need to check my forgiveness.
the forgiveness meter.
No, we're good. We're all good.
I think that'd be a movie, really, to tell you the truth.
Welcome to the Get Real Podcast. We talk about a lot of things. We both love heavy metal.
Love it. Yep.
And we talk about different things, ethereal things, spiritual things, food.
Yes, good food.
The Cambrian explosion, Bigfoot, whatever hits us. So tonight we're going to talk about something very special and very personal to you.
Yes.
Glennard Skinnard, as I have you in my cell phone as.
And that's been for years.
It has been for years. Well, Glenn, you've been writing a book.
I have been, and part of the challenge is first I needed to learn how to write.
So, okay, that's always good. That's always good.
No, I've been writing a book. I have to say, in the studio with us, we have my son Samuel in here.
Hello, Samuel.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, and he is illustrating for the book as well.
Excellent.
So the book that's being written is the whole reason why we're sitting here doing this podcast. It's something that God stirred in me. I have to say this is that I didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm going to write a book today. That was not something that I just decided to do. It's something that I really believe has come through a 10-year journey, that the time that both you and I were in the desert, because it's about something that you and I have talked about a lot, and that's the stones crying, the rocks crying out that Jesus talks about when you have the Pharisees trying to silence the masses when he comes into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, and he looked at them. They're like, oh, Master, can you quiet these people down? And he kind of looked at them and said, yeah, if I do that, the rocks over there that are inanimate, they're going to cry out instead. So there's going to be a lot of noise anyway.
Well, can you explain for the listeners a little bit as far as what inspired it? Obviously, a lot of your personal walk, going in the desert, as you were saying, and a lot of different things. Was there a specific point which it kind of came together and you had, an epiphany and you're like, whoa, I really feel like the Lord is speaking to me? Give us kind of the why and the behind it, the inspiration directly.
Sure. The epiphany came in February. I was at church.
It was my birthday. Thanks, Glenn.
That's right. It was your birthday. That's exactly
I'm an
right.
inspirational fellow.
You are an inspiration. It was in February, and the pastor at the church that we attend, he got up and he spoke, and I don't even think he realized he was looking at me when he said this, but he mentioned, and he spoke very clearly, Luke chapter 19, about the rocks crying out, and that if the church doesn't, they will. And he looked directly at me, and it just stirred in me that, because this is something that you and I have talked about for years, how God uses metal, God uses music, things that are outside of the church, to glorify himself. And after the pastor talked about that, he just said that, I went up to him, I said, and God's going to save every one of those rocks. And I really believe that's the case, and I walked out of there, and I said to Deb, my wife, who's here in the studio with us too, that, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book about this. And the reason for writing the book, I'm writing it and have been writing it on 3 levels. It's not a very long book, and it's not to be a big scholarly thesis or anything like that. It's just to share. And it's written on 3 levels. It's first of all, it's written for the musicians that God used to sustain me while I was in the desert. When I was in the desert, there was certain songs, certain music, certain groups, and I knew that God was speaking to me through them. I wasn't in the Word. I wasn't praying. I was going to a church, but it really wasn't much.
Yeah, he wasn't hanging out in the Sahara.
No.
Actually,
there was a month that I did hang out in the Negev.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother.
Okay.
That's a whole nother.
Podcast.
I did go to the Negev. That's a whole nother edition. But he was speaking through that, and I kind of knew that, and I've talked about it with my sister. So the first level is for them, because I don't know if they realize what they did for me.
And explain in detail, for example, from a desert, you mean you're walking through something heavy, big questions, personal turmoil, your
Physical pain.
physical pain. You had to hammer out things pretty much on every level, from spiritual to physical to financial to everything. A lot of people have walked through similar things, and you were given comfort from, I guess people would define it as a secular source, which is kind of weird. We could get into that as far as saying, like, what is really secular? God
Right.
made it all.
God made it all, right, exactly.
And so you, surprisingly, in that what you felt like you were alone, you felt like you're walking through these things, your walk with the Lord was tested, but you were given great comfort from the mouths of these rocks crying out.
Yes. Extreme comfort. And it wasn't until the light switch got thrown on in the February, March time frame, because in working on this book, there's been a lot of things I've been looking at that people would say that might not be right, or that's not Christian, is what they would say. And one of the things that I've taken a very close look at is the bird, the raven. I love ravens. And a lot of people are like, oh, that's the devil's bird. That's an unclean bird.
Yeah, God made that one the last time I checked. You know?
He made it.
Pretty sure.
And when Elijah was in the desert, the prophet, who fed Elijah? It was the ravens. It were the things that the religious person would think would not do that.
You're making me want to get a bucket of chicken. I don't know if they have raven.
Bucket of chicken.
Extra crispy raven.
Oh,
That's some good eating, boys.
That is good. Dad, instead of the pizza, can you go get us some Kentucky Fried Chicken tonight? So, yeah, and that's what happened, and that's how this all started. And really, my experience with heavy metal started when I was a kid, and it just was kind of a turmoil for me, and I explained that in the book. I mean, there was 10 years that I lived without listening to any secular music, and that was before the desert experience. Mm-hmm. That's when you and I were at that place that, we're not really going to get in much detail right now, but there's a lot stirring in me, and there's always been a passion towards it. So the first level is towards the musicians in the metal industry that God is using. And there is no question about it. The more that I listen, dude, you sent me that Pixelate video with Devin Townsend. Here we go on Devin Townsend.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And
he's a rock.
He is a rock, and that's one of the lyrics in the song is "We are the rock."
Yeah.
And I'm like, there it is, right there. You're saying it right there. Doesn't even know it. And then I'm writing it for the metalhead who's been rejected by the church.
One of the things I'd like to bring up, and for the listeners, when you hear us joke around about being depasteurized or unpastor or non-pastor, both of us were pastors. We were very deep into theology and a lot of different things. We'd preach the gospel, write music. We did a lot of different things. Television, radio, did different things. Right now, because of some long podcast worth of circumstances, we're outside of that, and there are advantages.
There are.
Because there used to be, I would have discounted this so quickly with just snap little theology, nerd theology. No, I'm sorry, that's secular music. God didn't move in that. It's got to be over here with Sandy Patty. You know what I'm talking about? And everything has got to be in its nice little row. And then you have to be OCD about everything, and that's what spiritual is. And God doesn't work outside of that. Nonsense. It's not what the Scripture shows.
No.
I'm sure you have a list of stuff.
And you remember, stay away from the electric guitars, and there were certain rhythms.
The beat
patterns of rhythms.
Oh yeah.
Where in the world did that come from?
Yeah. Fear and
where in the world?
And,
because God created it all anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the title of the book is The Stones That Cry, and it's subtitled God's Precious Metal. Really, what I see happening now, and this is the whole other reason
that's a good title.
Yeah, God's
pretty sweet.
The Stones That Cry, God's Precious Metal, and what I see happening is he's let the devil kind of have his run with heavy metal for a while, because we've talked about this before. If you go back and you take a look at the beginnings of heavy metal, it didn't start out as this very dark thing. As a matter of fact, we could throw on Black Sabbath's After Forever right now, and it sounds something like Jonathan Edwards would have preached. Mm-hmm. Very scripturally sound, very clear call for salvation, and then it got skewed. But I think it's coming back around again, because when you listen to Devin Townsend, when you listen to Nightwish, when you listen to those bands and what's coming out, even Epica. But I think God's reclaiming that music. I think there's a really special place because it's so deep, so complex, so intricate, so intense. It just encompasses all of the characteristics of God's personality.
Well, I was thinking about it today because there's certain aspects of metal and really any sort of full throttle, passionate expression of music. Okay, metal is something that I think we converge on and we like, and that's where you specifically have seen God move. But anything, because there's always the 80% or maybe more where it's, oh, I want to be famous, I want sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's not a true artistic expression. Or it's what we were talking about, sedative music. I just want a Margaritaville out of my life for a little while. But yet there's this 20% or so that when I listen to it, it's literally fallen human beings created by God that are dealing with heavy questions, and they don't even understand what sort of lift and what sort of inspiration they're being given by the Holy Ghost to say and sing certain things that are exactly what inspired your book. And it's just amazing to me how, for example, if we were not unpastor, non-pastor right now, it would be so taboo in most circles. Not, Pastor Bob, who was in California, and, where's he at now?
He's in Nashville. Pastor Bob Beeman is in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, I met him in L.A. in the early 90s, but there's so much that is there that can be expressed. Think of it, David. He didn't just dance. He danced till his robe fell off. He didn't get in trouble. He committed adultery and murder. I mean, there was an intensity, and I'm not saying that all of that was good, but that was very real.
Right.
And it's more honest than somebody that's kind of life could be. Remember the game shows in the 70s and 80s where somebody could win as many groceries as you could put in a cart?
Yes.
Or they go in a store and they do it. Can you imagine if somebody just puttered along and just was really not passionate?
That'd be boring television.
Well, think about life. The clock is running. And so we, even as Christians, sit there and we'll judge people that really dump a lot in the cart, even if it's off, even if it's a worldly pursuit, even if it was selfishness, even if it was in sin. But there is a wisdom to what they're doing with the clock running and the intensity of what I would call those types of passionate music. It could be punk rock, it could be metal, and we're both metal fans. I like punk as well, but it's those people are answering and looking for the answers to those questions. They're dealing with the wilderness, with the pain, with death, with the finiteness of mortality, all the different things. But they deal with it in heavy metal specifically with more of an honesty, more of a noble, what did I say the other day? A noble agnosticism.
Yep.
So they're not sure who God is. They're not sure about all those things. That's fired up. I can't wait to read all 130 pages.
About 130 pages.
Are you done yet? Or are you going to bust another 300 pages on us? I know you. You're going to have an energy drink and go, ooh.
Maybe there will be a part 2. The part that we're at right now is putting the pictures and illustrations in. Because a guy like me, I got to have pictures and illustrations in the book. They just have to be there. And Sam has given us, we've got it over here on display in the studio right now, one of the pictures that's going to be in the book. Sam, can you talk to us about that? And how'd you come up with that? What are we looking at?
Oh, yeah. And for those who haven't seen it, it's a picture of John the Baptist and this, I'm going to call it a force underneath him. And the whole inspiration behind, I just drew his face, and I was inspired by part of the Bible where it said, John the Baptist, he wasn't your normal average, what people would expect of the church, but yet he was one of the most, doctrinally sound people you would ever read of in the Bible. But yet you would read of him screaming at certain times, and not just, oh, I stubbed my foot, my toe hit the nail, in the doorway. He he genuinely hurt, and he had a burden for everything that was going on in the world. And on top of the stones crying out, I was thinking of maybe he might have been angry for certain people being quiet. I know sometimes I feel, if you're not going to speak up for yourself, or if you're not going to cry out for yourself, a rock would do it for you, and that would stir something in me. If you don't even want to save yourself, or you're not going to cry out for yourself, the rocks would do it for you. The lowest of the lowest would do it for you. And that really resonated with me. And that's kind of something I was thinking of when I drew mostly his face and the anger and the anguish that he's expressing in the middle of just all the darkness and all the chaos going around him. And I was actually listening to one of the podcasts when I was drawing what I'm going to call this force that's underneath him. And I was listening to y'all talk, and when God was creating the earth and like the void and everything, the literal translation of the word from, what was it written in?
Tohu and Vabohu.
Yeah, literally translates into chaos, and God moved in the chaos. And I was thinking of that because in the picture, he's amongst all this chaos and this darkness and this blackness that people would not associate Christ moving in. But if you take the Bible for what it says, instead of listening to someone else tell it for you, it says God moved amongst the chaos and organized it himself. He literally got up off of his throne in heaven and he moved. Wow. And so that's something I was really inspired by when I was drawing it.
I got to write more pages.
Yeah, I knew it. I know this guy.
I got to write. Here's the thing, and this is my son, and that's what's so exciting. First of all, Sam, I didn't even think about the rocks being the lowest of the lowest crying out. It very well could be that the reason why we have not seen God's judgment fall completely on the world and just the apocalypse and it just end and there's still time is because you have people being moved on like Devin Townsend screaming out for grace.
Yeah. Oh, that Grace video.
I can't talk enough about that.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, Sam, what you're saying about the darkness is that does not look like the Sunday school picture that I remember of John the Baptist with the white robe and the halo.
No, not at all.
But that's more realistic to what it was because John the Baptist was a wild man.
Yeah.
In the darkness that you're talking about, I didn't realize this till last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago when I learned that when John the Baptist came and when Jesus came, there were not many people who believed in salvation. There were very few true believers, but the people that went to go listen to John the Baptist were, okay, scribes and Pharisees did show up.
To check on him.
But you had prostitutes out there, you had witches, you had wizards. All the people that you would not find in church were the ones who went to go listen to John the Baptist.
Yeah, that's really cool because I think that probably is the most prominent example of that sort of intensity. It was unorthodox. He looked different. He sounded different. I know there's really good videos with Leonard Ravenhill talking about John the Baptist. And he was saying that Roman soldiers would go out there in just huge groups when they're off or they have leave. They would go out there and listen to him because this guy was like over the top. I mean, what was cutting through the ether, it was revelation. So he had this thing about him where they knew that he was genuine. He wasn't corrupt like the rest of the whole temple, it seemed, during the day. He wasn't into... Imagine, they were suffering. The Romans were hating on the Jews and all the violence, and the Jews are wanting to have their country back, and everybody's miserable, and there's not enough chickens in the pot, and everybody's hoping all these different things, and then this voice just cuts through. That's really... I was going to say Raven.
No, really.
A raven in every
you
class.
you just indicate something. Is you really want that bucket of chicken tonight?
I'm sorry.
that is coming through loud and clear. I don't need to be a prophet to figure that one out.
In a quick review, during a wilderness experience where you felt like a big old flesh ball, like a greasy bucket of chicken,
fried chicken,
you, in a very unlikely place, received comfort in ministry through voices that aren't even directly people that would name the name of Christ.
They wouldn't.
It's interesting.
And what's interesting, though, is one of those voices in 2010 did come to know the name of Christ.
Yeah.
Roy Kahn.
Yeah.
And he just reemerged. And I was just reading his stuff today. 8 years he's been he's disappeared. And he came back with a praise song, which is really awesome. It's on YouTube. If you type in Roy Kahn, I can't remember the name of the song.
He's one of the best male vocalists, period.
Absolutely the best. And, one of the songs, believe it or not, that comforted me, and people are going to be like, okay, dude, you're just really out there, is Camelot's March of Mephisto.
I like that one.
Okay, the video for it is absolutely...
Maybe we're just weird.
We're just weird, okay. The video for it is absolutely terrifying, but if you understand what they're showing with the woman who's just drowning in sorrow, her own sorrows and that self-inflection, and then you've got the demonic coming, trying to lure her away to jump off the building. That's how the demonic realm works. So when I saw that, it gave me a little bit more insight to... this is what goes on. This is what happens when you drown in that sorrow. You just attract all sorts of friends that you really don't want.
Right.
and they're going to try to manipulate you and get you to do different things. And I thought about it. It's like, so why should I get upset about this when you read a whole book about the demonic in C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters? So basically, you have a visual, musical Screwtape Letters with the March of Mephisto.
Huh. Interesting.
So, yeah, well, I am weird.
I think it's fascinating that another genre, escape music, Katy Perry didn't pull you out of darkness.
No.
And it's like there's so much that goes on that when I look at his artwork there and I think about a lot of the mainstream voices right now, smiley preachers, and everything's going to be just do this, this, and this, and it'll all just be great, you know? And then people that need a deeper answer, that's like you want to throw up in your mouth. You hear that. It's like you want something that's going to meet you in the desert, that's going to show you the truth in the midst of the mess, but doesn't deny the mess or play fantasy games. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because that'll really bother somebody. You want to talk about somebody getting dejected and hardened. It's like give them that poison candy in the midst of that depth of despair.
Definitely.
That's
Definitely.
good stuff.
So the book is due out in September. This month that this podcast is going to be out. September 23rd is
How
the
do people
date.
get a hold of it?
They will be able to get a hold of it. You can follow us. You can follow Dan and I and the Get Real program. We've got a couple ways. We're on social media platforms. First of all, we've got our website. That's Lithoscry, LITHOSCRY.wordpress.com. That's on the web. We also have an email, lithoscry@gmail.com, and we're also Lithoscry on Instagram, which has been kind of a fun ride doing that. So as we get close to the book being published, you'll be able to check it out. We're also on Facebook too, but you'll be able to check out all of our social media platforms. I'm going to put information up on there. The electronic edition of it will be available on Amazon Kindle. We're going through Kindle Direct Publishing. I did not want to send this off to a publisher to change everything I said to insert Camelot Within Temptation with Katy Perry and the Jonas Brothers.
Yeah, okay.
So, and then there will be a hard copy of the book. I really am not that into ebooks. I like to have something in my hand, so the hard copy will probably be available in October.
Good. Let me dig for a second. What is your hope of when a Christian reads this, somebody that's washed in the blood, and what is your hope for somebody that doesn't know the Lord? How do you want and pray for that particular book to affect them?
The hope is the same for both on a different level. The hope for the person who's been washed in the blood is that some mental shackles will be broken. Because when I started moving into the metal, when I started getting to know the metal community, we've met some people, we've talked to some people, is that they're people. And all too often, because they look different, because they think different, they've been kind of shunned and pushed away.
Well, I think sometimes it even expresses itself subtly, but still potently. Like
right.
Somebody, they look, and just even the look of the industry of metal or whatever, they just, God's not going to be there. And it may not be that condemning, like you know, disgusting this, that, right. and the other, but just the subtle, like, no, there's no way God's
That's the condemnation.
Because you know what? Like, when I go to church at different times, and sometimes church itself in the United States can get really lame. Mm-hmm. And see, if we weren't pastors, we'd probably just split our church right now. You know, if we had a church right now.
We would.
But it can be like, oh, let's compete to see the praise groups. They're like, oh, let's have a contest to see who can sound just like Coldplay. That's not inspirational to me. You know, it's not. I mean, I can say these things. Or it's like a competition to see how much they can play everything from one particular super church, and they get all their music from there, and they don't take a chance. It's almost like a franchise. You know, you're going and you're getting your donut at the Krispy Kreme. It's going to taste the same in New York City as it, and it's like there's just something missing. There's not the depth of expression of what God's laid on an individual's heart to express to an individual local congregation. You know, right. I don't know. There's a lot there.
And the thing too for the person who's not the believer is to understand that God is bigger than what the church has made him out to be.
Absolutely.
That there's power in that.
And you look at it, there's such a profound difference. If people judge really quickly, man, if your dress don't drag the floor, you're a harlot, you know, like that. And it's like somebody that makes a quick judgment like that. They can be full of venom, full of anger, full of self-righteousness, full of jealousy, full of all these things that don't even register. But boy, they got the measuring stick out for the dress or for the this. And it's in general, it's really ignorant and dark because there's conviction of sin. But if you trust your eye too much, you think that only what you see is what you might be guilty of.
Yes.
And you are looking at other people going, man, how can they, how can he, how can she, how can they look like that? Instead of going, oh man, the scripture says, where is it in Jeremiah, I believe, I hate paraphrasing, help me unpastor, where it talks about that you don't even know the depth of your own heart.
No, you don't.
It's beyond your ability to sort out the depth of that sort of predicament. So that ought to bring a pause. And when we do make judgments, they would have to be really, really careful.
Right.
You know, except when I'm talking about people trying to sound like Coldplay.
And here's the thing.
My judgments are okay. Everybody else's judgments are bad.
When you approach something that you might not be familiar with, when you're trying to discern, it's very hard to do this, and it actually takes discipline, is that you have to approach everything with a mindset of neutrality. Because then it's only when you have that mind, now that's different than passivity, just kind of sitting there and drooling on yourself.
That's another podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast of passivity. That'd be a really short one and really quiet. We're just going to sit here and drool on ourselves, our podcast on passivity. But you have to approach it with just a level of neutrality is what you have to do, so that you can let the Spirit show you. And that's what God's Spirit does. And Paul says, test everything. Okay, we're free to partake of everything. Now, that's not a license to just go out and do whatever you want to do. But how do you know that something, and this is even true with Christian metal, how do you know that Christian metal is ungodly if you haven't even listened to it? And that's one of the things that's happened with especially heavy metal, is you've got a lot of people that are yelling and screaming about this ungodly satanic music, but they've never listened to the words. If you listen to what Ronnie James Dio and most of his songs was saying, was stay away from evil. Listen to the words, listen, partake, and then God will move in your heart to determine whether or not it's profitable for you. And that's really my judge for music, if it's profitable. If I don't walk away listening from something where I've learned something or have a new insight or maybe have been freed up in thinking in a different way, it's not been profitable. But I do have to say there are some funny pop songs that every once in a while I just do get a laugh out of.
Oh yeah, I'm not against.
I'm not against it, but it's profitable to laugh every once in a while because you need to laugh.
Right.
There's profitability in it.
Sometimes you want light music, you want to escape, you want to do this, but sometimes it's the equivalent. It's like agnostic theology to me is what metal is. Some of it's like, oh, you have to feed your family even if you're a metal artist. I get it. Not everything is going to be this huge, like, oh, I got inspired by this. But the muse, the Lord, and there's something that's going to rise up or find you, and you're going to express that and feel something, and it's going to be something there. It's going to be one side or the other moving you. It really is. And the Lord is in charge of all of it. But I'm super excited. I can't wait to read the book. For our listeners out there, we have listeners across the world. We're starting to build in our numbers slowly. We have from Ireland. What are some different countries?
We've got Ireland. Italy's been huge listeners. We've got friends in the Netherlands that listen to us on a regular basis. Okay. Right here in the United States, we've got quite a few listeners, but we do have an international listener.
We appreciate every single one of y'all. We love you guys and gals. And one thing that I want to say to clarify, like you may be thinking, what is this? It may be above some of their heads as far as theology or spiritual things and everything, is there's different things that you can feel inspired when you actually listen to heavy metal or some of your favorite songs. The Lord might be speaking to you. You might not even believe in God, but we encourage you to be in some arena of being agnostic, ask questions if you don't know everything about God. And it's our prayer that the Holy Spirit would move upon our listeners, every single one of them, and they'd be able to have a revelation that would be profitable to them. So Gwen, I'm super excited about when that book comes out. And Sam, thanks for joining us today.
Yes. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break and we're going to get that bucket of chicken, and then we're going to come right back with an interview with a band that I got to see for the first time in Tampa, Florida. The band is Armor of God. We're going to be talking to the entire band tonight. Orlando Vicente is the leader of that group. We're going to interview them and talk about their album, The Dark Face of Greed, and what they've got coming up in the next couple months, because they got some stuff on the horizon.
That's awesome.
So we'll be right back after that bucket of chicken.
Okay, welcome back to the Get Real podcast. This is Dan. We have just enjoyed, a whole bucket full of greasy Raven wings.
Yeah, that was a whole bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken brought to you courtesy of Mrs. Deborah Remsen.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Hey, look at that. We got somebody on the
right.
screen here in the studio. This is awesome. So with us, we have Orlando Vicente and Carla Danielle from the band Armor of God. Orlando, is there anybody else there with you other than just you and Carla tonight?
Right now we have two more, and maybe momentarily more members will be coming in. Right now we have Diana, and we have Henry. Hello. Thank you for having us.
Hi.
Hey, Henry, how you doing?
Doing fantastic, guys. Thank you for having us.
Good. And Henry, what do you do with the band?
I'm the drummer. I'm the guy that hits the drums really hard.
Awesome. And Diana, what do you do with the band?
I sing.
Nice. So I saw you guys for the first time down in Tampa in May of 2017. As a matter of fact, Dan and I, in the studio that we're in right now, I'm looking at the poster from that concert that was at the Orpheum, where you guys opened up for Hammerfall and Delane. And I understand there's a little bit of a story behind that with Henry. Can you tell us about that?
Oh my goodness! Yes, that was a crazy day. The day before that show, I had flu symptoms, and at least just one, which was shivering, and then next day on the show it got really worse. I went to move on into a fever and a headache and all that jazz. So basically, getting up on stage was really difficult for me. As you can imagine, the music that we play requires speed and focusing and energy all over, and I did not have any of that.
From where I was, I couldn't tell. It was very well done.
No,
very well done.
That's cool.
Yes, basically, we went through the show. I got off the stage. I went to my car, drove back to Orlando, got into bed, and that was the end of my show right there.
Well, it was a great show, and it was the impetus for this interview that we're doing because I was very impressed during the show. Now, Orlando, obviously the name from your band is taken from Scripture, Ephesians chapter 6, 10 through 18, where it encourages believers to put on the whole armor of God. Why did you choose your name based upon the content of these verses, and how do you believe these verses apply to the world in which we live today?
Well, when I was looking for a name for the band, I wanted something powerful, something that represents heavy metal in a positive way. Basically, even without scriptures on a way, it's something that's kind of like natural, like the Spirit tells us that we need something that to defend ourselves against the evil spiritual forces, because every day we actually live a real battle that whether we want it or not, we have a spiritual battle to fight every single day. And the only way that we can actually be victorious in that battle is with help from God, from the Spirit of God. So basically, the armor of God does exactly what it does. On top of that, being a metal band, metal is a kind of music that serves for battle. You listen to heavy metal and it's like, I'm ready to go to a fight now. This is battle song. So in those senses, I thought it was perfect to be able to have this name. The armor of God is what will defend us against evil, and it's good for metal. Really catchy.
Yeah, you got a really good point there, because there's nothing more metal than armor.
Yeah.
That's what armor's made out of.
Exactly, and that's actually very true. Like armors are made out of metal. So I even thought about that on a research or just my way of thinking and processing. The name of the band is like, we need metal, we need heavy metal to defend us. So it makes complete sense.
And that brings up a point that is really interesting that I want all of our listeners to understand, is that we are surrounded by evil forces all around us. And a lot of times, even believers don't even believe that. Yeah. And you go into a day and you wind up and your day turns into an absolute train wreck. And you wonder why, but you have to go back to that scripture that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. A lot of people don't understand that, which I think is absolutely fascinating that you hit upon that.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. I thought about it one day. I was thinking about, I want to be a good person. I don't want to have enemies, but I want to be in a war. But when you start thinking about, what life is, whether you want it or not, you have to fight. You still have to fight with those forces and within ourselves, because God lives within ourselves. It lives in our heart. So the same thing with evil. Since we're little kids, we see cartoons. You see the little good angel on one side, the little bad angel on the other, and
Yep.
it's like oh yes, it's cartoons, it's this and that, but it's basically a representation of what it's really like inside ourselves. And how many times when we're growing up and we listen to people talk about God and says God or Jesus live in your heart. So basically, if it lives in my heart, that means it's inside of me, and I really have to pay attention to my conscience. A lot of people say things like, "Well, isn't God only in your? Is something that's part of your brain? It's you don't see God, so isn't it something that's in your brain?" I'm like, well, my brain is definitely something very important to understand God, because it's part of what created in my body, and it's how I actually am able to grasp God's words or feelings or whatever it is. This is how I see it as a walkie-talkie. My brain is like that walkie-talkie that communicates directly to God.
You're absolutely right, because there's other believers that also think that they can just sit and drool on themselves in passivity, and that God is just, they don't have to engage their brain. And that's really one of the arguments against Christianity, is that, hey, you put your brain on a shelf and you don't think for yourself, when it's actually quite the opposite. Some of the most intelligent people that I've met, not only just in the metal community, but are the people that really dive into Scripture and really have a very, very deep relationship with the Lord. And that's really interesting, because a couple nights ago when we were talking on the phone, I was like, this guy sounds like my brother, from another mother, to put it in a way, because we're so similar in a lot of ways, in a lot of ways that we think. And it's interesting, too, that you bring up about heavy metal being music for war and warfare. A lot of people don't think about that. I have a military background, and the guys that I've worked with often used to say that if you saw a Humvee pulling up with Five Finger Death Punch blaring, there's trouble for the enemy, and that is the music that does get you ready for that. I've never seen anybody getting ready for war listening to Katy Perry or Miley Cyrus. Have you, Dan? Have you seen that? No,
No, I don't think so.
not at all.
Wrecking Ball. That'd be good.
Maybe
Yeah.
some people, but in general,
Yeah.
yeah.
Something that you state on your website that's very interesting, and it almost seems paradoxical and oxymoronic in a way. You say that part of your vision for Armor of God was to spread a positive message through heavy and uplifting music. And for a lot of people, putting the words heavy and uplifting in the same sentence or just right next to each other just really doesn't match for them in their mind. Can you share with us how you came to the realization that heavy music can be positive, uplifting, and even glorify God?
Well, I mean, just from my personal journey through life and music, of course, I didn't start it listening to super heavy music, but I did like listening to rock and roll, and bands in the 80s like Bon Jovi, Survivor, Rat, Poison, Striper. So when I heard Striper, that was my first. Yeah, Whitesnake.
Whitesnake shirt on. Yeah,
my wife. Yeah, all these bands. One time I was listening to like something in MTV. This Snyder was talking about, and then along came Bon Jovi, the father of happy metal, and it's like it's true, because everyone had a smile on their face, and it's like that. Now, when I heard Striper for the first time, they were pretty heavy compared to the other bands in the era. And then I read the lyrics, and I'm like, whoa, these guys sing about God, about Jesus. This is pretty cool, and it's very uplifting, basically. Eventually, I started listening to bands like Halloween, which is very, very fast. And of course, you can probably tell through our music that is a very big influence of ours. Since most people consider Halloween the kings of power metal. but it's very, very uplifting music. It has all this nice melodies to it, just like Iron Maiden does.
Like a positive energy.
Yeah,
that
positive
emanates.
energy,
Yeah.
positive messages as well. Like
Mhm.
you read their lyrics and they're very positive. So it's something that really made me happy. So I'm like, metal can be a great instrument of happiness, basically.
I was really getting into their album today, and when I was listening to it, some of the musical things that I really appreciated were the fact that the tempo changes just created such emphasis and such, and then it's almost like, and I play around with music, but I'm nowhere close to that level of talent, but I can appreciate it when y'all actually get in a position where it's like you create a cradle for the vocals, and the way the female vocals just cut through. It was really good. I very much appreciated it with the Rage of the Angels
Rage of
song.
the Angels.
I loved that. And y'all were, as far as guitar and drums and everything, y'all were at like full Muppet speed. I mean, I had to put my face back on it, melted off. So I really enjoyed it. So, but yeah, we were going to ask about influences. Any more that you can think of, or one in particular, if you had to pick a chief influence?
Well, for me personally, I mentioned the ones that I already did, like Striper early on, and Whitesnake and all that, and of course Halloween. After Halloween, I also did like all the power metal bands like Rhapsody and Nightwish. Basically, are very, very big on my influences. Very early, like late 90s, early 2000s. On the newer side of, and in that spectrum of heavy metal. Now from a death metal kind of thing, I'm not too big into death metal, but I do like some of it. When I was growing up, one band that got me into liking this kind of music a little bit was Carcass, actually,
Okay.
because of the vocals and the melodies that they have. And it's like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then there's a few Christian metal bands like Extol that go in through that style that I really like. Now, Tourniquet is another band that really
Yes.
influenced me, and they're very peculiar and different at the same time. The drumming style is amazing, and it's thrash, but it's progressive, and it's pretty cool. Also, Megadeth is a very big influence that I really like Megadeth a lot.
I was into Tourniquet in college.
Were you?
Yeah, so-
How come that doesn't surprise me? It does not surprise me.
I want to let you know the other two members arrived. Raymond, our guitar player, and Hector, our bass player, are here as well.
All right.
Okay, great.
Welcome. So we got the whole complete band now. This
there we
is
go.
awesome.
I hope they heard my compliments, because y'all, it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you got
Hands all here.
All right. How about non-metal influences?
I was getting ready to go there.
I'll start with that, and then I'll let the other members talk a little about their metal or non-metal influences. For me, well, growing up in Puerto Rico, actually, even though it's a Latin country and Latin music is very popular, my first influences were not Latin, were more rock and roll. Eventually, I did like older classic rock like the Beatles and things like that. I did like classical music, Beethoven, Mozart, especially Vivaldi. Actually, I like one time I was listening to the Four Seasons in my car, and I had like this epiphany. I'm like, wow, this song is so amazing. You know, it's like, wow, it's like it became my favorite classical piece of all times is the Four Seasons, and it's so beautiful. Besides classical music, I mean, I do like some of the Latin rhythms like salsa music. Within the salsa genre, sorry, I would put Ruben Blades. You probably heard about Ruben Blades. He's from Panama. Like my Raymond here, he's from Panama.
Hey.
He's a very good musician in all aspects, as well as a lyricist in salsa. When it comes to maybe urban music or rap or anything like that, I'm not a big fan, although I can appreciate some of the styles. There's a specific artist in Puerto Rico that is called Vico C. He is he actually sings very positive music at the same time. So that's one of the reasons I like. It's very philosophical and intelligent music. In the English style, I would probably pick out like people like Eminem, at least on the style of music, I don't really listen to a lot of the lyrics because my brain doesn't work that way. My brain's more musical, but I can tell that what he's doing is really hard with the way he's doing it, you know? So I
Right.
appreciate things like that.
Awesome.
That's interesting, the classical metal connection, and that you had mentioned Vivaldi, because Vivaldi sounds light and springy, and I'm familiar with the Four Seasons part of it, but it is very metal-esque if you look at it differently. It's very linear. It's got these, I don't know, it's a lot of math going on there,
Yeah.
but it's good.
It's like
good stuff.
listening to Yngwie Malmsteen, basically, or Randy Rhoads, basically, on violin.
Yeah. And you and I had this conversation the other night that when I was a teenager, I went to my mom and told her, I was like, Mom, if you take classical music and play it on electric guitars, you have heavy metal.
Yeah.
And she was kind of, yeah, I guess you're right. And then, a few years later, well, many years later, I discovered the world of symphonic metal, and I was like, yeah, I was right. And boy, I should have stuck with the trombone. That I would have been one heavy metal trombone player. Man, maybe I should pick it back. If this gig doesn't work, that's what I'm going to do. I'm back at the trombone again.
Go ahead, quit your day job.
I'm sure we can compose some piece with a trombone in it.
There you go.
That'd be good. Yeah, I think one of my wife's favorite songs is by Ruben Blades or Blades.
Yeah.
And what is it? The one about the guy who's got the knife. I can't
Pedro
remember.
Navaja.
Pedro Navajas. That's it. So I do know that. But we've got a question. Oh, Carla. Can Carla hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Carla, question. In addition to being lead singer in y'all's band, you have a professional career. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do full-time and your educational background?
Sure. I am a clinical psychologist, which I tell my patients, I have a costume that I wear is that look of being a clinical psychologist, because I do consider myself a metalhead. And as a trade, then I am a clinical psychologist. So most of them do know that I have a band. They ask me, have you had a show? Can we see some of the pictures and the videos? They actually really enjoy. And some of my coworkers and my supervisors know that I have a Christian heavy metal band. So they have been to seeing our shows, and it's really, really cool how you can marry both things, because when you talk to a lot of people that are depressed on a daily basis, it can get a little dragging, and sometimes it can be a little bit draining for myself. So I really enjoy having something to do away from my professional career that really uplifts me, that takes away all that stress. Armor of God as a band is a family. We are a big family here, and we really enjoy our time together. We have parties, we celebrate our birthdays, we eat together, we go out together, and of course we play together. Every time we play, we have a blast on stage. People that see us on stage, they usually comment, how can you guys have so much fun where you're playing? I could really tell you we're having fun. So that aside, I do have a doctorate in clinical psychology. I studied in a specialized university in Puerto Rico. It was actually an APA, American Psychological Association accredited program. So by the time I finished the classes, I was already in love with Mr. Orlando here, and I wanted to move to Orlando because I lived in Puerto Rico. So then I moved to Orlando here, and I finished my internship here. I actually completed my dissertation here, actually with a group of veterans from Vietnam War. They were fantastic. I worked with them at a clinic as an intern, and they were really fantastic in helping me in completing my dissertation, my doctoral dissertation. Then from there, I did a postdoctoral fellowship here in the city of Orlando at that point, specializing in clinical assessment and psychological assessment. So right now I work as a geriatric psychologist. I specialize in treating the elderly, and I work in nursing homes and skilled nursing facilities. That's where I work now. And like I shared earlier, it's wonderful. The owner of my company, I work as a consultant, and the owner of my company, just every time I have something new, he's like, oh, plug it into the rest of the group of the psychologists. We all want to go to your show. We want to know what you're doing. And they want to hear the album. So those are wonderful things. I feel supported with my heavy metal family here. and also in my job, to communicate that, this is heavy metal, the heaviest, the awesomest, and also the most uplifting one, which is Christian heavy metal. And it's been a blast. And right now we've been together for 7 years. So this has been 7 years in the making and sharing all this stuff. And it's wonderful. And I'm going to go ahead and stop talking right now because I could probably talk until tomorrow. So I'm going to let somebody else take the mic here.
That's really neat.
That is neat.
It's good stuff.
You're proving a theory over here at the Get Real Metal Shot Studio is that one of the myths that people have about metal musicians and metalheads is that we're all not very smart.
And the opposite.
And it's the opposite is true. That is the myth. And you've just completely blown that myth out of the water, which is totally awesome, is that most of the people that we've been interviewing and talking to have professional careers in education, have higher degrees in education, work as professionals as well. And it just goes to prove, and Dan and I have talked about this all the time, that if we handed out an IQ test at a heavy metal concert, it would probably go through the scale, but if we handed it out like at a Katy Perry or Miley Cyrus concert,
It'd be different results.
The results would be a little bit lower, I think.
But you got to promise us one thing, is that you won't look us up in the DSM-5 after you get off of this podcast, because we're both
you guys, don't worry. Everybody here is highly functional, and everybody is highly, happy with themselves, so we're real good.
Good. Okay. Okay. Good. All right. We might be calling you again in about a week. That is also.
I love to hear how tight y'all are as far as working like a family. That's wonderful.
That is,
and that's a testimony as well. It's just the love of God. With that. So.
It is. We got a question for Diana, because again, this is another one of those things where people, if they read it, they'd be like, how did that happen? Diana, we understand from the website that you have a background as a veteran church vocalist. What age did you start singing in church, and then how did you find the freedom to mentally and spiritually pursue singing in a metal band?
Before I can even remember, I've just been singing, and then going to church on Sundays with my family. Part of the worship that really reached to me was in singing, and so as soon as they let me in the choir, I was there. And it's just been my life. As far as how God works through me, I'm always feel that I connect with him whenever I do something musically, that we work through things together. And it's just been great finding my friends here and forming the band together and just praising him and meeting new people and bringing positivity into the world. That's really what I feel like I'm doing. I'm having a blast as I do it. And it's really sad that there's a stigma on certain genres of music as far as it's negative, it's dark, and all this stuff. And I find that it's not true. The nicest, warmest people I've met have been at our shows, have been fans. They're really generous, and I see that there's Christ in everybody I meet. And I'm just very blessed and grateful that I've been able to do this.
Have you experienced pushback as far as within, I guess, church circles, of people not understanding the genre or misunderstanding kind of where y'all are coming from? That would seem almost unavoidable to me.
I personally haven't experienced it. All of my friends at church were all involved with music together, and they've actually come and supported us. We've even performed at church.
Yes.
They've invited us to festivals and things like that. They've been very welcoming to us.
What's interesting about performing at church is that people are not necessarily prepared to know what they're going to hear. But then after they hear it, they're like, wow, you guys sound great. You guys are amazing. And it's like, I understand that the kind of metal we play is not like screaming in your face. It's singing and it's melodies and there's a few growlings, but tastefully done, and people do like it. Yeah. So
it's hard not to like it.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, it's such a good way to tell a story or a narrative. I was thinking about that today. What I meant about musically with the pauses and the tempo changes. It was just like a beautiful cradle to bring a narrative and with a lot of emotion. It was great.
It does. Here's the thing that really amazes me when I was thinking about you guys, and after having seen you guys for open for Delane and Hammerfall, those are some pretty big names. And you've also opened for Doro, and you've also opened for Tourniquet, which are big names as well. And you're very clear on where you're coming from. You don't compromise, and I really appreciate that. Why do you think it is that you get to open for these bigger acts that don't identify with the genre of Christian metal? And how have you been received at these shows, being so clear in what you believe?
Well, I mean, there's like a big picture here, I would say. It's like destiny or whatever. I mean, we definitely have to open doors that get opened through different contacts and things like that. We actually, through our drummer, he has a friend that is all into the metal scene. So he contacted all the people from the metal scene, one of them being Camden Cruz. He's a guitar player and he's also a promoter, but he plays in the band Seven Kingdoms. It's a power metal band from Central Florida. And once in a while, they put some good shows around. So they needed a band to open for them one time. So they're like, "Oh, Armor of God is this new band. Like, they want to play. Would you give them Would you give him a chance to play?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I don't even know if he had listened to us before or no, but he called me and he gave us a chance to play with them." So that's the first time we played in this venue that is basically the biggest venue in Orlando for this touring artists that are not super famous, but like Doro played there and Luca Turilli and all that. Those guys plays in that pub. Yeah. So after we played there, Camden he contacted me again a few times. I was like, "Hey, we have this band coming up. Do you guys want to play on their show?" And to be honest, a lot of it is promotion at the same time, because like some of these bigger shows we're supporting act. So what supporting act means that we support the show because they're on tour. So that means we are required to sell tickets as well for some of them. And it's fine, because in the end, if we don't sell all the tickets, every single band has to promote themselves somehow. So if we have to pay a few extra bucks to promote ourselves, then we'll do it. It's not a big deal. Some people are all against that, but it's pick and choose. And I think it's opportunities. Basically you get your name out there, and it helps us because it gets to open the doors for other people to hear us. And that's what happened in Hammerfall, where we got to reach you specifically, and you contact us. So if we don't take those kind of chances, then we're hidden and we don't shine our light in the world.
If it weren't for that concert, I wouldn't have known about you guys at all. And finding you guys has been an absolute blessing. Your music has ministered to me. It was really encouraging to see you there. I did not know when you came on stage. I could tell that, okay, Armor of God, that might be a Christian band, but may not be. But then when you guys started playing, it became so obvious. And I was like, this is awesome, because this is good. It's heavy. It's not compromising truth at all. You could hear the truth, and just the spirit in the place. I really think it set up the spirit in that venue for the rest of the show. It just really kind of cleared the air in there, which was really, really kind of nice. It was just a really refreshing atmosphere, and the whole night, everybody just had a great time.
I was
trying.
As you're sucking back on some Theraflu behind the bass drum.
We did pray before we went on stage, and it's like, well, sure, everything that it be for God's glory and make us have a great show out there, and he did. And big props to the sound guy as well, because most of the time, that's like super big. That's probably 90% your sound is the sound guy. Like you can play a certain way, but what comes out of those speakers, and of course, when we're on stage, we never can tell how good or bad it's sounding outside. No. So that's always a problem. But I'm very confident because of the response we had that night, the sound was great. So that's props to the sound guy.
I had a question as far as writing. Can you maybe run through what is y'all's process? Do one or two of y'all kind of write some stuff, or lyrically, or do y'all collaborate? And how does that sort of work?
Well, for the first album, mostly, let's say it's 90% my lyrics, 10% Carla for the first album, the only one we have so far recorded, Dark Face of Greed. So all those lyrics I did through many years. Some of them I had written like for over 15 years or even 20 years, some of them. And little by little, I wrote some more. Carla did write The Dark Face of Greed. Now, musically, it's all me. I compose all the music. So basically, the process that I do is I record the drums first in my computer, and then I start recording every other instrument until I have the song done, and then I send it to the rest of the bands. Like, hey, here's the new song. You can start learning it now. For the
He even sings like the girls.
Oh, yeah.
So he'll send us scratch vocals with him trying to sing like Diana and singing like I do, and it's really funny because we're like, okay, Orlando, we get it. We know what you want us to do here. That's cool.
You could release a comedy special album.
We could, yeah.
Hey, the Bee Gees, they didn't really break out until they went
Yeah, the Bee Gees
falsetto.
and Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
Yeah. Now for the newer material that we have and that we're playing live, we actually you got to hear some of the newer material we have, but we haven't recorded it yet. We're in the process of recording now.
Process, yeah.
But the new material, I have done some lyrics, and Carla has done some lyrics as well, and Diana even did one of the lyrics for one of the songs too. So we're taking, lyric-wise, I'm able to, grasp whatever they have, and then I'll put it in music, basically. The Diana song, she actually did most of the melodies as well. She had like a little recording just with her and the voice, and a little like electronic piano. Like, here, this is my idea. Here you go. You can work on it now. And it took me a little bit because it was different. It was hard, and she did it in one scale, and then when I'm trying to figure out what is the real scale of the song, it's like really hard because it's like half tones here and there, and like I have to somehow come up with the real chords that I'm going to be playing for this song.
With your debut album, Dark Face of Greed, it's just packed with gems all over the place. It pretty much covers the entire spectrum of truths found in the Bible. It addresses those who believe, those who don't believe, those who might be questioning, those who are really walking deeply with Jesus. What is the message that you want to get across for those who are walking with the Lord and those who are still searching on that album? What was the main theme, the main thrust of that you wanted people to walk away with?
Well, basically, the main goal of my lyrics-wise would be to have people realize that they cannot or should not neglect their spirit, because we all have a spirit. And if people can actually focus on that, it will be such a blessing for everyone. Whether you're walking with God or without God, you have a spirit. You are a spiritual being inside a material body, and we cannot forget that. We cannot neglect that. There's some truth to that, and that's why. What's funny, like how nowadays people that are mostly they don't believe in God. They say, well, what proof is there about God? My answer to that would be, what proof is that there is no God at all? Like, even if you're a science person, the whole reason there is science is because there's God, because there's atoms and frequencies and electrons and biology, everything. If there's no God, there's no science, basically.
You're absolutely right. Science doesn't explain away God, but what science does is it explains in a way some of the ways that God works.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly.
And true science, when people really ask questions and you start looking, the more questions you get. You take protein synthesis. It's statistically impossible for it to happen by itself. It simply is. You gather a bunch of mathematicians together and they're going to go, this can't happen. So if you're really honest about it, it points straight to the Lord. It's got to.
I'm just amazed that you were able to pronounce protein synthesis.
I've been working, Glenn. I've been working on it.
We got a miracle right here.
Oh, yeah,
it's a miracle.
She's going to look you up in that book of hers. Classify.
I hear the pages flipping right now. we talked about the lyrics, and I want to go back to that a little bit with Dark Face of Greed. I love the album cover artwork. It's deep. You can't separate metal from drawings and artwork. You can't do that. But when I listen to that song in particular, it sounds like I hear a warning for our time. And am I correct in hearing that there is a warning in that? And what do you see at this time in human existence that moved you to write that song, The Dark Face of Greed?
Well, I think that song to me represents how there's this duality in looking for success, in looking to, I want these things in my life. I want to get ahead. I want to be successful. But then at the same time, there's that drive to like, okay, well, now I'm not really working for I'm just working to acquire more. I'm just working because I want more of this world. And I wanted to play on that duality of the more I reach, the farther down I fall. Even though I am going up in terms of the world, my spirit is lacking because I am all involved in getting, get to the next step. And I myself, as a human being, I sometimes struggle with that. Being a professional, I say like, well, I want to make more. I want to do this. I want to expand this. I want to do that. And to me, Orlando is always my sounding board, and he always reminds me, that we are growing in spirit, and we are rich in spirit and experiences, and we are rich in life because of what we share together, and because our love is the most important thing that you can have in your life. So in that sense, I'm already a millionaire because I have so much love around me. So sometimes we just fall into that trap of trying to look for, reach. And I think that's a little bit of how I was trying to go there with writing the lyrics. Also, I got to say that Orlando was the one that gave me the idea, because I said, Orlando, I really want to write a song for our next album, or maybe for this album, I want to write something. And I told him, what do I write about? He said, why don't you write about greed? And I'm like, greed? So then I started thinking, and then I came up with that thing of the dark face of greed, like greed present, like you have that beautiful Hollywood type of life that people want to aspire to, but then there's a dark side to all that. And that's what I was writing about.
Yeah, so basically, I wanted to write about greed, so Carla wanted to write a song, so I'm like, yes, now I don't have to write about it. Right?
When I listened to that song, it affected me because empathizing with the lyrics, I could feel the bondage, the soul being dragged down, the spirit being dragged down by greed. It's powerful. It is a very powerful song.
That lie of greed, it permeates our society completely. You think about it, and everybody thinks, if I get this, and this, just a little bit more,
right,
then I'll be there. And then everything's superficial. And I think what she's talking about, just the testimony of even their relationship, and that the thankfulness and the contentment that flows out of that. It's a beautiful testimony. That's really neat.
It really is. And it goes to what Jesus said about seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then everything else will be added unto you.
And being humble, basically greed, what I think about greed is one of the biggest evils that corrupts society in all genera. It corrupts in politics, it corrupts in private companies, it corrupts in families. It just gets there because people, and what people see on TV is like everything is the plastic world. It's like the money, the cars, the this, the that. It's all about having more while neglecting the spiritual side. And that's why I think it's so important to make people aware that greed will corrupt our souls, and we cannot fall for that lie.
So we talked about it. You're working on some new stuff right now. And when can we expect a new album from you guys?
And how do you get them?
And how do we get them?
Yes, well, right now we are, I'm developing like a plan of attack. Basically, we are recording. The process is always very long and tedious because of all of us have our full-time jobs, and we can record little by little. I was able to invest some on a personal studio at home. So between Henry's studio, he has a studio, he's doing drums over there, and then I'm trying to do the rest of the instruments at my place. So hopefully that will now help us to catch up with the recording process. I'm hoping we're done recording by the end of the year, November, this December, and hopefully by sometime early next year have the album out. And once the album is out, we are going to promote it. Right now, I'm thinking about doing a platform like either Kickstarter or something like that to be able to get the album to some people and to fund it and see how it goes with that. And after that, it's easy to get our platform. Once the album is out, we can get it out on iTunes, on all the digital platforms.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah, right now, our first album is out in all the digital platforms like, iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, Amazon. Even in YouTube right now, you can stream it. So we put it out there so people, because if people don't know who you are, then, we try to make it easy to reach. Now, for our second album, we're going to try to see if we are a little bit more exclusive, at least at the beginning. So that way people get interested, and hopefully we can do some sales and things like that. And eventually put it everywhere as well.
Well, you're going to have to let us know and keep us posted on when that's going to come out. And you've got some big shows coming up as we wrap up 2018. So can you share with our listeners where you're going to be so that they can catch a show?
In just less than 2 weeks, we're going to be playing with Angra over here in Orlando. It's going to be September 7th. So by the time the podcast is out, I don't know if that's going to be already passed or not, but September 7th, Angra is touring with a band from Romania called Scarlet Aura. It's the only band from Romania I've ever heard, and it's also female-fronted melodic metal. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So we're excited about it. I already talked to them on the Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. So pretty nice people so far. They've been keeping in touch. And then after that, we actually just have a festival on the Space Coast Harley Davidson. It's going to be a Halloween festival at the Harley Davidson with 6 Florida bands. It's called something about the...
Too close to Halloween Metal Fest.
Yeah, Metal Fest. Yeah.
It's free.
Cool. And what's the date for
That
that?
one's going to be October 27th, which is the Saturday before Halloween.
Yeah.
And then the following week, on November 3rd, we have a show at the Haven in Orlando with a band from Canada called Borealis, which is a really cool band that I actually heard a few years ago for the first time. And it blew my mind because they're very melodic, very nice sound, very melodic sound, positive, kind of progressive, a little bit, yes.
Dan and I have already put in discussion a trip down to Orlando for that show on the 3rd of November. So
I'll try to swing it.
we're going to have to try to swing that one. Where can people get tickets for these shows?
Oh, in our website,
Okay.
it was just armorofgodmusic.com. We have links there to tickets and events information. So definitely our website would be the best way to go by it. And they can also direct connect me on our Facebook page, which is the Armor of God Music Band Facebook.
Okay, so that's armorofgodmusic.com, correct?
Yeah, that's our website, yes.
Good. I want all of our listeners to be able to get that, and you guys, everybody that's listening, needs to go check everything out, because you also sell those really cool T-shirts on that site too, with your designs on them.
Yes.
Those are really nice. And since it's going to be September when this podcast comes out, it's never too early to start shopping for Christmas. So, hint, Dan. Boy, what does Unpastor Glenn want in his Christmas stocking this year?
Those shirts are going to be going lower in price because I'm ready to do the new logo. We actually have a new logo, which is the one in our website already. And we're going to be doing shirts with the new logo as well.
Big sale on the way, too.
Big sale on the old shirts. It's going to be this price.
Twice the nights for half the price.
Do you guys have anything that you want to touch on for our listeners that we haven't asked you?
Oh, we haven't said where everybody's from, right?
Oh, yeah,
Did
you
we
wanted
say
to know
that?
Where is where is everybody from?
Yeah, well, I talk a little bit about Puerto Rico. So, yes, I'm from Puerto Rico. I was born and raised over there, and I moved to Florida when I was probably like 22, I think, back in 1999. Yeah, and then here you go. We're going to the right side.
So I'm Carla, and I'm a singer, and I am also from Puerto Rico. And I moved 9 years ago is when I moved here to Florida. actually when I fell in love with Mr. Orlando Vicente and moved here. So loving it ever since.
I'm Diana. I'm from Orlando, Florida. Haven't really lived anywhere else, so I'm kind of a native to this area, and I sing in the band.
I'm Raymond. I am the guitar player, the harmonizer. And I was born and raised in Panama, and I moved here back in 2001, and I've been in and out. I've been in and out since of the country.
Yeah, you lived in Turkey.
Yeah,
right?
I lived in
Wow.
Turkey. I moved back to Panama, and I've lived in I've been in the outskirts of Seattle. Lived there for a while in this little town called Kenmore, North Carolina. But Florida's where I call headquarters, and this is where I've got my family.
And
So
hopefully you're not going anywhere for now.
right.
I'm Hector Acevedo. I'm the bass player. I'm raised and born in Puerto Rico. Moved to Connecticut, I don't remember, but maybe 10 years ago. I moved to, I'm here now in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, really good bass player.
Me, the drummer, Henry. I'm originally from Colombia. I moved to the States in '95 to Chicago, where my family used to be. They moved to Orlando eventually, and I went along with them. And I'm been here since then, and I'm loving it, loving in this family every single second.
And I guess one thing I wanted to add, about the connections in this band here is, like Carla was saying earlier, is we're friends, we're family more. It's like, to me, the story of this band is also like a story of perseverance and faith in God, because I'm 42 right now, and we started this band like 7 years ago. But before that, I've been in different bands in Puerto Rico when I was in high school. Eventually, when I was in college, I was in another band that was a little more like thrashy sounding. But when I moved to Florida, I wanted to form a band, and I just couldn't get the right musicians. Actually, the first musician that I met from this band was Raymond here, along with our old bass player, Luis, because I met Luis at the church where I was going. He was playing the acoustic guitar in that church. So eventually I hand him a bass because I needed someone to play bass. And Raymond here was playing the drums at the time, because we were three-piece. I was doing I was doing youth ministry at church, so that's when we were three-piece, and we did a few originals and also some cover songs. We did sing like that.
Our God is an awesome God, but like doom metal.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome God in doom metal. You have to listen to that. Actually, we need to record it.
Yeah, you do. You really do. I like that. Well, thank you so much. What we're going to do is we're going to play Rage of the Angels for our listeners so that they can see what actually melted Dan's face off.
Yeah, just
Dan's
he's
always looking for an excuse for the way he looks.
Yeah, no, I got a face for radio. This is not working out. They're a great band. They're super tight. You can tell they have a great relationship with the Lord. That was a blessing, dude.
It
made
really
it
is.
worth putting up with you for like 2 hours.
Gee, thanks. Yeah. But I do have to say that chicken was good. That was a good choice.
Oh, that was really good chicken.
Of meal this evening. So if you're interested in more about what we're doing over here with two unpastors who really don't know what they're doing behind a microphone, but just kind of going with what's in their hearts, you can check us out on our website at lithoscry, LITHOSCRY, .wordpress, WORDPRESS.com. You can also email us if you have any questions or if there's a topic that you'd like to hear about, or
That'd
if
be
you
neat. Feedback.
some feedback if you completely disagree with us and throw darts at our pictures every night.
Dude.
Go for it. You can you can get us at lithoscry@gmail.com, and we're also on Instagram at lithoscry. Dan, it's been awesome hanging out with you again.
It has been awesome hanging out with you, Glenn.
Good.
It's been way too long.
Everybody, just keep it real.